Hello, I'm Jim Woodford, and I was sharing earlier about my experience of coming down with a catastrophic disease and dying and going through the tunnel of light, coming out the other side and seeing something hideous and horrendous to my left that wanted to consume me. But to the light, this beautiful light, and when I cried to the light, God sent 3 of his magnificent angels to help me. I know it sounds incredible, but God is incredible, you see. He is incredible. And he saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself, that I was worth protecting. And so I tried to describe, and as I said earlier, I feel like I fail miserably, because how do you describe a being of heaven? But imagine, if you will, 3 of the most regal creatures you could ever conceive of. Very tall, very, but elegant. There was a 10-foot angel, behind him about a 13-foot angel, and behind him again a massive angel, at least 15 feet tall. All of them cloaked in this incredible, I used to call it white light, but it's beyond color. And I guess the best term is that one used by my co-author, Dr. Tom Gardner. They were clothed in the fullness of glory, the glory of heaven. But it was as though someone had figured out how to spin cloth from sunlight, because their robes were as though they were spun from sunlight. And as they, I didn't see their feet, but as they glided along the ground toward me, their robes moved from side to side. And I noticed that although it would look like sunlight, there was a reflection as though it was moonlight dancing on a dark lake at night. It was stunningly beautiful, truly. And I'm just astounded, because I had had no belief in this. As I said, I knew what angels looked like. We've all gotten a Christmas card. But suddenly, here they are. God's creatures coming toward me, beautifully clothed, and their features were neither male nor female. I like to think the best of both of us, but the most serene, regal looking face, very light, almost white hair. And at first I thought their hair was blonde, but in fact I realized with my analytical mind that what I was seeing was this. I didn't see wings at that time in the traditional feathered sense, but they had as though there was 2 spires of golden light that canted inwards at about 45 degrees above their head from their shoulder blades. And I realized there was a golden reflection from one wing to the other, and that cast above their head, this reflection formed a golden haze, this reflection from both wings. And it formed a haze that made their hair look blonde, I thought, but in fact their hair is silver. And I think that's where we may get the idea of a halo. It's actually the refraction or reflecting of the light between their wings over their head. And that casts this beautiful golden glow over this incredible, serene countenance. But of all the beauty of the angels, the thing that I see in my mind's eye the most were their eyes, the eyes of an angel. Not green, not blue, not gray, but the most incredible shade of violet. Violet eyes staring at me. And I noticed something that amused me. After I was with them a while, I realized that angels never blink. Now you think about that. On earth, if someone gives you that look, it's generally not good news. But when the angels stared at me unblinkingly, I had this feeling it was one of love and concern and protection. Are you okay? Fear not. Are you okay? And as they came toward me, I mean, the first one was 10 foot tall, and I'm looking up at this magnificent creature. He comes And behind him, as I said, there was another one about 13 feet tall. The taller one coming from behind, I learned, was a warrior angel. And he had been sent to do battle with the darkness, and the darkness had fled. And he was dressed differently, and you could tell by his manner and by how the other two angels deferred to him that he was in control, because he had more gravitas. He not only was larger physically, but he seemed to be in charge of the operation, so to speak, of the rescue operation. And the tall angel also was dressed slightly differently. His robe as well shone like with the fullness of glory, but his sleeves were trimmed in purple and gold, as the hem of his gown was as well. I was just so taken with how powerful he seemed, and at the same time this aura of gentleness that came from them. And I got the feeling, and this is the only way I can describe it, I got the feeling that they had this air of kind of Victorian propriety about them, very polite. But what stunned me was the first angel came right up to me, and I'm looking up at his violet eyes, and he's looking down. He has a little smile, and then suddenly I hear his voice. It's like a thought transference. And as he smiled at me, his arm came out and went around my shoulder and pulled me close to his body. And then suddenly I became aware of this magnificent, huge wing coming out around his arm and pulling me even tighter to his body. And I had the most incredible feeling of peace. It was as though a vibration went through me that I had never sensed in my entire life. The most pleasant, indescribable sensation of being hugged by an angel. And as he held me close, I looked up into his face, and those beautiful violet eyes looked into mine, and then I heard the voice of an angel for the first time. And this is what he said. "Fear not, James. We are your constant friends." And now when I sign a Bible or I sign any card to anyone, my wife Lorraine will tell you, I always sign it, YCF, Jim, your constant friend. They are our constant friends. They are real. They exist just as sure as the person sitting next to you exists. And so here I am, snuggled up to this angel, feeling so loved and protected, and the darkness has left. And in my sense of wonderment, I tentatively reached out and put my hand on his arm, and something wonderful happened. Something wonderful. As I touched his arm, the feeling of this beautiful feeling I had intensified, and I felt I'd overstepped my bounds. And so I removed my hand. And when I did, the light from the angel's body came back with my hand till I got about between 6 and 10 inches away, and then the light let go from my hand and went into the body of the angel. Folks, I'm here to tell you today, the love of God is sticky. There's something you don't hear every day. The light of God, the Spirit of God wants to cling to you. It wants you back. It wants you back in ways you can't ever imagine. Love wanted to rejoin any part of me that was apart from it. And I feel that that sticky love was reclaiming me, bringing me back to Jesus. And here I am feeling the sticky love of God, the light of the angel clinging to my hand. The most magnificent feeling you could ever imagine, being hugged by an angel of God. And as I've spoken over the last 2 years, I would have people say to me, Jim, what's it like to be hugged by an angel? What's it like? And I struggle with that for months and months. How do I describe what I felt? And finally, I came to this conclusion. Being hugged by an angel of God is like being hugged by 50 grandmothers at once, with a slight hint of tapioca. I smelled tapioca. But let me tell you why. We serve a God so compassionate, so loving, so concerned, that He realizes what a transition it is for us to go from our earthly being to heaven, for our spirit to make that transition. And so He puts things in front of us to calm us, to make us feel at home. And why tapioca for me? Because when I was a little boy walking home through a blizzard in Newfoundland, I'd get home from school, my grandmother would brush the snow off me, my mom would sit me in front of the wood stove and give me a big warm bowl of tapioca. You see? And for each of you, when you get there, God will put in front of you something that makes you feel you are at home, because at last you finally are. And for me, it was tapioca. So let's set something straight. You do not have to like tapioca to get into heaven. You really don't. But for me, it brought back memories of the love of my mother, my grandmother, and that warm, snug little house in the wintry landscape of northern Newfoundland. And I'm constantly amazed. How could God, with all He must have to think about, remember that I, as a child, liked tapioca? Jesus knows you better than you know yourself. And the wonderful thing is, you have this sense of family. Not just that you've come home, but you have this sense of family, that you are among your original family, and you truly are. And so, I don't know how long the angel hugged me, but suddenly I was aware of his wing receding and his arm coming back, and he stepped back, and the 13-foot tall angel stepped back, and then they both bowed to the tall angel as he came toward me. Now remember, he's 15 feet tall, about that wide at the shoulders, built as a warrior, massive, a feeling of strength and gentleness at the same time. And as I said, his robe was slightly different, but I noticed something else. He had a golden sash around his waist, and that came over one shoulder. And over that belt, he had a belt, a golden belt, and it had a scabbard. And I could sense a light coming out of the scabbard, a weapon of immense power. I don't know if George Lucas, when he came up with the lightsaber in Star Wars, ever had an angelic encounter, but this was what I saw. It was a weapon of light, and the darkness fled from it. And he comes up to me. Now, think how tall 15 feet is. And then he bows to me in the most reverent way. Not just a bow of Victorian propriety or of politeness, but a bow of genuine awe. The angel was in awe of me. Of me. How could this be? Because he saw in me the light, the spirit of his master. You have no idea how unique, how truly special you are to God. He has put his light in you, and yet he has given you free will to do with it as you like. I ignored it for most of my life, but never again will I ignore the light within me. And now here I am at the entrance to heaven, and the angel is bowing to me, to me. You see, God created the angels to serve him. But he created us with his light, his spirit. And the angels recognized it, and they were bowing to the light and spirit of their master in me. I was overwhelmed by the majesty of the moment. And as he straightened up, he smiled at me. Again, his lips didn't move, but that thought transference came to me. And I heard a very deep voice from this angel. And he said to me, as he straightened up, "James, would you walk with us?" And then he made this motion. And as that giant, huge arm and robe came back, this beautiful path appeared through the green grass of heaven. And I turned, and with an angel on either side and the tall angel behind, I began my walk through paradise. Ladies and gentlemen, words do not exist in our human vocabulary to describe the beauty of what I saw. But imagine, if you will, as I started my walk, this incredible vault of blue. Not a deeper blue, a blue that I'd never seen before. And I spent a lot of my life in the sky. And the pilot in me came out, and I started to search for the sun, because if I could see the sun, I could orient myself. Am I southwest? Am I northeast? And remember, everything that I thought, before I could finish thinking the question, one of the angels answered it. It was stunning. It was as though they were in my mind. And I guess I must have thought, where's the sun? Because suddenly I heard the tall angel's voice. And he said to me, "James, in heaven there is no sun, nor moon, nor stars." Now you have to remember that at that time I had no knowledge of Scripture. But since I've come back, I've read it, I've sat for days with pastors who have deep biblical knowledge, and of course it says right in Scripture, you know, there is no sun, nor moon, nor stars. And so because there's no overhead sun, there are no shadows in heaven. Now think about this. This matters. We walk out to our car on a beautiful day, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, there's a 3-foot shadow on one side of it. Do we ever give it a moment's thought? Of course we don't. We grew up with it. But in heaven, because everything exudes the light of God, there is no shadow. There is no shadow. There are no shadows, no darkness of any kind. But the other wonderful thing is there's no shadow of despair, no shadow of shame, no shadow of injustice, no shadow of hate, no shadow of anything that could affect the love that you feel permeates everything in heaven. So my vision was tremendously enhanced, because as I walked along, I became aware that my vision had changed. And I now had peripheral vision, and yet with the ability to see ahead, both sides and behind, without even turning my head. And yet at the same second, my vision was as though it was binocular, and it was as though it was telephoto at the same time. And it automatically, I could see as I'd never seen before. And I could look off at the distant mountains of heaven, and I just had to focus, and I could see the petals on a beautiful flower on the slopes of heaven. And yet, in the next instant, I could focus on the flower on the ground. People say, that sounds confusing. Look, it was no more difficult than texting and watching the news on TV. It just automatically happened. But I was able to see and absorb everything around me in all directions. The incredible flowers, the beautiful pastures, the sunless sky, beautiful flocks of doves and multicolored birds, species that don't exist, flitting from tree to tree, the beautiful brooks that meandered through heaven, filled with this crystal water that they told me eventually flows into the water of life, into the river of life, and through underneath the gate of heaven. And the stream beds were beautiful. The water was a blue aquamarine color, but like a perfect turquoise jewel. And the stream beds were covered in golden pebbles, and so the light refracted off that and danced up through the water. And the water made a beautiful sound as it rippled along to join the river of life. And I'm just overwhelmed by the beauty. It's almost more than I can comprehend. And I'm asking all these questions. I have journals filled with the answers of the angels. Journals. And this book that we've produced is just a mere sampling of the glories of heaven. And so as we walked along, I'm aware of everything that's around me. I can sense everything is aware that I am there. But I looked down, and on both sides of the path were these incredible flowers. And at first, when I looked at them, even with my vision as enhanced as it was, it looked to me as though they were composed of stained glass. And I was intrigued by this, so I stopped, and the angel knelt on one knee and invited me to join him. And I knelt down, and I noticed as our knees touched the ground of heaven, light rippled out from it. And he said to me, "James, look." And he cradled one of the flowers in his hand. And I realized then why it looked like it was stained glass. It was simply because the petals of every flower were transparent and diaphanous. And so when I was looking at a red flower, beneath that was the blue, and beneath that was green, and beneath that was yellow. And that all combined to create a color that doesn't exist on Earth. So, and as they moved in the breeze, this color was ever changing. And here's an amazing concept. In heaven, color has sound, and sound has color. Now there's one for the scientists. Color has sound, and sound has color. And so I'm intrigued by the beauty of these flowers. And the angel invited me to get down even closer and look at this beauty. And as I'm down there, suddenly out of the flowers comes the most magnificent fragrance. Look, I've been in South America, I've been in Africa. There is nothing to compare with the fragrance that come off these flowers. I wanted to just lay there and inhale this magnificent fragrance. And I remember saying to the angel, "How beautiful they smell." And he smiled at me and said, "Yes, James, that is the scent of sanctity." The flower's fragrance is the scent of sanctity. And so as I leaned down to inhale it even more, I suddenly became aware of something. It sounded like the tinkling of small bells, but it was melodic. It had a rhythm to it. And there seemed to be a sound coming from the flowers. And it was beautiful, and it formed a melody. And as it wafted up, that sound turned to the faintest of colors as it caught the breeze of heaven and flowed off. And I noticed that the sound and the color that had sound and the sound that had colored, all was moving toward a light on the distant horizon. And I was told all of this is going as praise to the throne of God. And I said to the angel, "Is that music I'm hearing? Is that music?" And what he said was truly transformational. He said, "Yes, James, the flowers are so happy you're in heaven, they're singing to you. The flowers will sing to you in heaven." Imagine, the flowers will sing to you. I'm so overwhelmed by this. And he gently helped me get up, and then we continued our walk. And I'm just enthralled. I mean, the species of flowers that we have on Earth, but then tens of thousands that we don't have, that are heavenly flowers. And as we walk along, I'm asking all these questions, and I had the strangest sensation at the same time. With my peripheral vision, I felt, even though they were answering the questions, I spoke. I felt like, and I don't like using this term, it's just too computer-aged, but there's no other way to describe it. In addition to answering my questions with thought transference, I felt I was being downloaded with all this information of heaven and its environs. For instance, they told me that they refer to paradise as the garden that surrounds. Paradise actually means walled garden. And that's the beautiful countryside that surrounds the heavenly walls of the holy city. And as we walked along, they answered every question I could think of, and I must have been one of the most chatty types that they've ever had. But I just wanted to learn about this magnificent kingdom that I didn't know existed. And as we walk along, and I'm looking at all the beauty around me everywhere. I noticed as we walked by, the flowers turned their petals toward us as though watching us go by. As though watching us go by. So happy that I was there. And I'm overwhelmed with the sense of love and peace and grace that permeates everything. The light of God, as I said, exuding from every creation in heaven. This pearlescent light, this golden, holy light that covered everything, more pure than sunlight, more beautiful than moonlight, achingly, heartbreakingly beautiful. And so we travel along this path. They're answering all the questions that I have. We come to a slight rise. And as we go up the rise, as I said a while back, God puts things in front of us to make us feel at home. And when I grew up in Newfoundland, and all my life I've owned horses. And actually, my wonderful wife, Lorraine, and I met on horseback. So horses have always been a big part of my earthly life. And as I walked up that path, and I'm conversing with the angels, and they're speaking to me, they don't speak in contemporary style of speaking, but very polite, very correct, as I said earlier, in a with a kind of Victorian propriety. And as we come up, there's a split rail fence, as you'd see on any horse farm, many places in America or Canada. And I'm about to realize that God, once again, has put something wonderful in front of me to make me feel I am at home.
Have you ever wondered what heaven is truly like? Do you know someone who questions life after death? Now you can know the testimonies of people who experienced life after death. You will receive James D. Woodford's brand new powerful book, Heaven, An Unexpected Journey. Through this book, you will read about his first-hand experience with heaven, angels, and the afterlife. Encounter the glories of heaven and the stunning reality of the unseen world. Understand what it's like to hug an angel. Encounter the chilling realities of hell and the sights, sounds, and sensations of heaven. Read and hear firsthand accounts about the awesome beauty of Jesus, full of overpowering love and compassion. Gain faith to believe God for your own healing as you understand that God has a body parts room in heaven where miracles are waiting to be accessed. Take a tour of God's heavenly library with volumes of books that contain the accounts of each person's life. Learn how your prayers are converted into visible fire and rivers that ascend to heaven. You can get a digital copy of James Woodford's book, Heaven, An Unexpected Journey, by clicking the link below or by going to sidroth.org/heaven.